Hello, it's Meg. I hope you're all doing well. I know I've been away from the podcast for a while, and I apologize for that. It's just been a really hectic time in my life, just dealing with everything going on in my personal life, and then having this content creation thing on the side, and I was just a little bit overwhelmed and needed to take a break, which is not ideal when you're trying to launch a podcast and you only release 3 episodes and then you're gone for a month. That's really not good. But I'm trying not to be too hard on myself, just picking up where I left off and continuing the project because it is something that I'm really excited about and something that I do want to do. So nothing drastic has happened in my life per se, but there's different things going on in my life that just make it a little bit hectic, a little bit anxiety inducing here and there. It's definitely been an adjustment coming back to Japan and living with my family, which I'm super thankful for, and I'm, enjoying every minute of it. But there are definitely things that, like I had a routine back in Israel when I lived there. And so having to find a new routine, having to adjust to life back in Japan has been an interesting process, and I think I underestimated how much time it would take me to really adjust back to life here because, I've lived in Japan my whole life except for when I was in university, and so I just assumed that it would, revert back to normal really easily, but it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And it's taken some time. It's taken a little bit more intentionality than I thought it would require. And so that's been an interesting process of, adjusting to life back home. And maybe I'll do an episode on that as well, since it's an interesting topic and something that I think a lot of people can relate to when they are having, life changes and stuff like that. But that is not the topic of this week's episode. This week we are talking about dealing with negative body image. That was not a very smooth segue, but we're gonna roll with it because that's the only segue that we can think of right now, or we as in I can think of right now. So the reason I picked this topic, dealing with negative body image, is because I have been kind of having not a flare up, but kind of like an uptick in my negativity in terms of looking at myself in the mirror and being like unhappy about what I see. And it hasn't always been this way. There have been, times in my life where it was worse and better, but it's just like I feel a downwards trend, if that makes sense. And I wanted to get on top of it by talking about it. I think it's something that I'm not super comfortable talking about with other people, just because I don't really like dwelling on my body image too much, just because it's complicated, as with anything. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, of like feeling not necessarily super negative about your body image, but also not being super happy with it and not being very excited to talk about it per se with other people. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, where I'm trending towards the negative, but I'm not necessarily at like the pits of my negative body image where I'm like, oh, like I'm ugly, I'm horrible, not like that. But I just don't feel as good as I used to. And I just have a little bit more negativity towards my body image than I have in the last few years. And so I think it's important to talk about it, and it's important to dissect it a little bit. But before we get into the dissection of what's actually happening with my negative body image right now, I think a little bit of background is helpful and insightful. I certainly, when I was, trying to draft the script for this episode, I realized that there was a lot of like things in my past that definitely contributes to my perception of myself right now. And so I think it's really important to like look back at the past, not in the sense of like getting trapped in the past, but more so as like a looking at it in a way where you're kind of trying to understand more of like, where is this coming from, right? And so in that sense, I want to talk a little bit about my background and what my journey with my body image has been up until this point. So growing up, I was a tomboy and I played with the boys a lot more than I played with the girls. And so it was really frustrating and really uncomfortable for me when like puberty hit, right? And I know it's uncomfortable for everyone, but I feel like I hit puberty a little bit quicker than a lot of my peers and my classmates. And so it was really uncomfortable being in the body that was going through changes, but also being perceived a different way because of the way that my body was changing. And again, I was hanging out with a lot of boys and not so much the girls. And so I feel like that difference in my body became more and more apparent and more highlighted because I was a tomboy and was hanging out with guys. And it just really made me uncomfortable having to deal with my own body changing and like the weirdness of that, but also having to deal with other people's perception of my body and feeling like, people were looking at me a different way, especially the guys. And it was just like a really time. And I think that, for most people, puberty is an time. But I think because my puberty happened a little bit before everybody else's puberty hit, it was just like I was the odd one out, and my development was even more highlighted than like the others because it was happening before everybody else. And so it was just really strange, really uncomfortable. And so I started to dress in a way that hid my body because I was really uncomfortable with how people were looking at it, how people were perceiving it, and also how I felt in it was really strange as well. And so I really wanted to hide the fact that, my body was getting curvier and changing to become more womanly. And so I would often buy like baggy clothes, clothes that really didn't fit me, but I was like, this is the style. Like, I want to look like I don't really have any shape. And so, in late elementary, early middle school, I remember getting like an XL t-shirt for like my gym shirt, even though I think I was probably realistically like an M or an S even. Like, that's how extreme I took it, where I was like, I'm just not going to show my body and like the shape of my body to anyone. And so I started to wear baggy clothes, oversized things were like my best friend. And I don't think I necessarily had like the self-awareness to be like, my body image is quite negative right now. Like, I didn't have that self-awareness, but looking back on myself going through that, I was like, yeah, I can see why. Like, I felt so uncomfortable in my own skin. I was very, very uncomfortable with my body. And so my body image was quite negative. And while I was taking notes for this script, again, I was like thinking back on younger Meg, and I realized that that's around the time when my posture started to become bad as well. I used to do ballet, so my posture used to be pretty good, and I'm always wondering these days, like, when I went wrong, where I went wrong with my posture, because my posture is so bad these days. But I think that's around the time when I started to develop my bad posture, because I was standing in a way that made me look smaller, or like I just wanted to look smaller as much as possible. And having good posture like forces you to like not puff your chest out, but like kind of like push your chest out. And I think that accentuated my chest, and I really dislike that. So I think that's kind of where my like bad posture started to come in. And I'm really sad that that happened because again, I used to do ballet, and so my posture used to be pretty good, and I lost it because I didn't like how other people looked at me when I had good posture. And once I hit middle school, I was still wearing baggy clothes, you know, oversized things, but I discovered sports bras because I was an athlete most of the year. And so, you know, I was having to have some kind of support for my boobs. And so I discovered sports bras, which actually flattened my chest quite a bit in a way that I was very happy with. Like it didn't accentuate my boobs anymore. Like it hid them or like smush them so that it looked like it wasn't there. And so I remember in middle school, even when I didn't have sports practice, even when I didn't have gym class, I would always be wearing a sports bra. And if you've ever worn a sports bra, you know how uncomfortable it can be, in the sense that like it really like restricts not your breathing, but like it really like pushes everything, like it forces you to suck everything in kind of in a way that's like restraining. And back then I used to tell myself that like the sports bras were really comfortable, but I think I was mistaking the comfort of like emotional comfort of knowing that like my boobs didn't stand out versus like the actual physical comfort, because high school me realized that like normal bras are so much more comfortable and like much less constricting than sports bras. And so middle school me, I don't know if it was really good for my body to be wearing sports bras 24/7. I even wore my sports bras to bed. Like that's how intense I was about my sports bras. So I don't think that was good for me in hindsight, but whatever. The point is that I discovered sports bras, and that was like a revolutionary discovery for me, because I was like, oh, I really want to like hide my body, and this can help. But I will say my body image did improve a little bit in middle school, in the sense that I started to work out more regularly, you know, because I was in sports and I was an athlete. And the way that I perceived my body was less about how it looked, but more about how it felt and what I could do with it. And that was really exciting because, you know, for the first time for the first time since self-actualizing the existence of like a body image, I kind of felt positive about my body. And in high school, I ended up not continuing in sports, but I found the joy of working out in the gym, like weights and treadmills kind of gym. And so, you know, I realized that I really like working out. I really like moving my body. And initially, I was honestly doing it more for my mental health, just because my mental health was in a more dire situation than my physical body was. But I definitely liked how my body looked when I worked out. I really like the physical effects it had. And I think working out allowed me to have a more positive outlook on my body. Again, like sports had helped with my body image. It showed me that like my body was not just about the number on the scale. It wasn't just about, you know, how other people looked at it, but it was more about how I felt in it and what it could do. I learned that there's such a thing as a healthy weight for people of different builds, and younger me always tended to be heavier than the rest of my peers, but that was because I have like a pretty sturdy build. Like my body in general is just like built pretty thick. And so it wasn't unhealthy for me to be heavier than the rest of my peers, but I felt like I was unhealthy for it. And that obviously had like a toll on my body image. And so in high school, I was able to discover that different people have different healthy weights. And as long as I maintain a healthy weight for me and my body type, it was okay. I think around then is when I had like the best body image. I definitely didn't feel perfect in my body, but I definitely had a more positive outlook on my body. And I think a big part of it had to do with the fact that I felt good in my body, because working out made me feel good and feel more in tune with my body. Now, talking about recent years, I feel like my body image has started to take a little bit of a nosedive as my body started to change again. And I'm told that this is completely normal in your 20s, your early 20s, for your body to start changing again. It's like the second puberty or whatever. But I dislike it, like it makes my body feel weird. It makes me uncomfortable in my own skin. And that has really taken a toll on my body image, just because my former healthy weight seems to be a little bit unattainable now. And maybe it's not impossible, but I would have to work really, really, really hard in order to hit that weight. And I'm just a lot heavier than I used to be. And again, part of it is just due to my build changing. I have a lot more muscle than I used to. I am a lot more curvier than I used to be. And so, that adds weight, but it just makes me really uncomfortable, being in a body that's changing from what I'm used to. And so I think that's where this uncomfortability is coming from. And now that I'm back in Japan, I think my uncomfortability with my own body has been exasperated. Is that a word? Exasperated? I think it is. Exasperated because I don't fit the cultural stereotype / like expectation of what a woman my age looks like and should act like. And that's just, like I don't really fit into the mold in multiple ways. I just don't fit that mold in, any sense really. But I think seeing so many people that's dressing the same way, seeing so many people my age looking a certain way, going clothes shopping, and then not being able to find my size as easily as I used to abroad has been a source of stress for me, and something that has negatively impacted my body image as well. Just because, I think societal pressure is a big part of body image for a lot of people, and it's the same for me. And I think in Japan there's this, everybody's so small here and everybody dresses kind of the same way, and I just don't fit that mold. I just don't look the part, and that's something I'm proud of. I guess proud is like a weird word to use. That's something that I'm like okay with and proud of, in the sense of like I'm glad to be different, because I don't really like the whole like everybody looks the same type of thing, and I like being different. But I think it does take a toll on me when every day I'm bombarded with images of like people that look the same way, and then I'm just like very clearly not that. And so, as I've talked about for a really long time now, I've had ups and downs with my body image, and right now just happens to be a down. And I don't necessarily think that it's a bad thing to struggle with body image. I think it's great if you have great body image, but I don't think it's something that you should be ashamed of if you do have a negative body image of yourself, just because I think everybody goes through phases, and it's tough out here. That's the reality. Like, people struggle, and I think for me it's really difficult to talk about these things with other people, and here I am making a podcast about it for the whole internet to hear about my insecurities with my body. But it's just like, the reason I wanted to make this episode and talk about it was in part to help me analyze myself and understand what's going on with my body image, but a bigger part is due to the fact that I want to normalize having these conversations, because as much as it has become more normal to talk about your body image and different types of bodies being normalized in the media, I think there's still ways to go, with helping people deal with their body image issues. And I understand why people don't talk about it, because it is very vulnerable, it's very uncomfortable, and it's very personal. But I think it's really important to talk about it because, first of all, it's important to know that you're not alone in this, right? Like, I'm not the only person in the world suffering from body image issues. Other people are as well. And I think even though different people have different degrees of dealing with negative body image, it's something that a lot of people can relate to, unfortunately. But fortunate in the sense that, like, there are people out there that you could talk to help each other out. And so I want to end this episode with a little segment where I talk about what I want to do about my current body image issue situation, because I think, again, it's really important to talk about the issue, and I think it's okay if you don't necessarily have like a solution or a way to tackle it yet. Like, the first step is recognizing that you have an issue with it, and then kind of talking about it with someone to kind of try to understand it a little bit more. I think that in itself is very valuable, very important. But I don't want this episode to just be like I don't want this episode to be a downer, and there are some things that I want to do to help improve my body image, and I hope that if you are also struggling with it, it could be of some guidance to you as well. The first thing I really want to do is find my new healthy weight, and I think this is going to take a lot of trial and error and a lot of time to figure out, just because my body has changed so much, and I don't even know what healthy weight would be for me. Like, I don't really have a good even ballpark estimate of what that would look like, and so it's going to be a process. It's going to take time, but that's something I definitely want to figure out, because my weight has been a source of like anxiety for me, a source of like negativity for me, and I just don't want that in my life anymore. And so I want to find the healthy weight and try to, get to it, maintain it, and all of that jazz. So that's step one for me, finding my healthy weight. The second thing I want to do is a little bit more cosmetic, but I want to find new clothes that fit me and make me excited. One thing that I have an issue with right now, as I talked about, is, being back in Japan and feeling like nothing fits me. And so I think it'll really help if I could find clothes that do fit me, that make me feel comfortable, but make me feel confident as well. One of the issues I'm having right now is the fact that I don't have access to my entire wardrobe, because I left a lot of it in Israel thinking that I was going to go back there. But obviously, like, I'm here and I can't access that wardrobe right now. So I'm going to get it back somehow, but just not right now. And so I want to buy some new clothes that can help fill in the gaps of the things that I want in my life. And I definitely have to go shopping on a day where I'm feeling a little bit more positive, because again, it's really disheartening to go into a store, try out like the biggest size, and then it not fit at all, like doesn't even make it past your thighs kind of thing. It's really devastating. It's really sad. And so I have to maintain a positive attitude when trying things out. And so I have to go when I'm feeling positive. But that's something I definitely want to do is, even though it does feel a little bit cosmetic and surface level, I think it'll really help me feel a lot more confident in my body, which should help with my body image. And the last thing I want to do is incorporate more movement into my life. I talked about how I used to love working out, and I still do really like working out. It's just I don't have a gym membership right now, and gym memberships are really expensive and I can't afford it right now. So I can't go to the gym, but there are things I can do at home to, incorporate more movement into my life. And I think moving my body, helping my body get stronger, will help me feel a lot better in my own body and feel a lot more positive about my body. So yeah, that's something I definitely want to incorporate more of. Whew. This was a vulnerable episode. This was a very emotional one. I know I don't necessarily sound it, but it's a very difficult topic for me to really talk about in public. And so I just ask that you're kind in commenting or responding to this episode. And yeah, I just hope that this episode is coming across as constructive and helpful, rather than just kind of me complaining about my body. So yeah, I hope the intent comes through well. Again, I'm still learning the podcast format, still getting used to it, but if you have any feedback for me, let me know about it on Instagram. You can find the podcast Instagram at Everyday Adventure Log. Or if you would like to connect with me personally, my Instagram is at Meg Shinagawa. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. There's not going to be an adventure challenge this time around, just because I want this to be a chill episode. I feel like the topic itself is pretty heavy, so I don't really want to pressure you into doing anything that you don't want to do, or I just want you to take the time to reflect and digest what happened in this episode. So yeah, no challenge for this episode, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. Bye.